welcome to The Art of Adventure. This is episode 188 with Kit and Rosie Volcano. This is part one of a two-part interview with the Volcanos. The Art of Adventure is the podcast that helps you travel the world, run your business, and embark on an epic quest. I'm your host, lead explorer, and guide, Derek Loudermilk. Check out the show notes for this episode and all the other episodes at derekloudermilk.com. And you can sign up for a free guide to the top 10 ways to make money online while traveling the world. So I met Kit and Rosie online through a mutual friend, and right away I was drawn in by their zest, their enthusiasm, and their openness. And I got really excited to have them on the podcast because they offered to take me on an adventure, and hardly anyone ever offers to take me on an adventure. You know, I plan these adventure trips and I'm the host of this show, so I'm always taking other people. And so right away I was like, wow, that's such a compelling invitation. And what they meant was that they're going to take me on an adventure to explore gender and sexuality and all kinds of things that I never usually talk about, because Kit is a transgender man and Rosie and Kit began their relationship as a lesbian couple. And so this episode is a little bit different in that we are going to explore personal identity and sexuality and gender and relationships and topics that don't normally fall under the Art of Adventure, but they are very adventurous, and I could tell because it put me way outside of my comfort zone. So this is a very interesting episode, and part two is going to be how they run their business, which is taking people on retreats on volcanoes to do yoga and coaching with them. So very interesting business as well. That's going to be part two, but here is the first part, which is all about gender identity, sexuality. I think you're really going to find this fascinating. So without further ado, here are Kit and Rosie Volcano. Welcome back to The Art of Adventure, and I have with me today Kit and Rosie Volcano. Welcome to the program.
Hi. Thanks for having us, Derek.
Okay, so let me get an audio sample. Rosie, why don't you say hello, and then so people can differentiate, because you guys both spoke at the same time.
Hey, Derek, this is Rosie.
Okay, that's Rosie.
And Derek, this is Kit.
And that's Kit. Okay, and so what's that?
You could also call me Kitten.
Kitten. That's a good one. All right, Rosie and Kitten, and this is going to be some new territory for the Art of Adventure and for myself. They have a traditional business, which is, well, maybe not totally traditional. So part of this episode is going to be talking about their business, which is coaching and yoga retreats on volcanoes, and the side of their business. But they are also they're a couple, and they're in business together, and started off as a lesbian couple, and since then Kit has, let me see if I get this terminology right, transitioned in transition to be a man. So I'm really curious about
I don't like that.
about this whole process, and I know there's all kinds of questions that maybe everyone wants to know. You probably get asked lots of questions all the time, and so I'm just gonna follow my curiosity and sort of ask you guys about also your relationship and the transition and some things like that, because it's, I imagine, a really big adventure to go through a transition. Would that be accurate?
It is and it's not. Sometimes I look at it and I think, wow, that was crazy. And other times I look at it and I think, well, that's one of the most boring things about you.
Interesting. So here's my understanding is that you were born. Well, let me just ask: were you born knowing that you were supposed to be a man, and then you eventually decided to make that your physical reality?
Gosh, it's complicated because everybody's experience is different. So I just want to like set that out there and say that this is my personal experience, and it's across the board. Everyone comes at it from a different angle. For me, I think that most of us are just human, and we all have feminine and masculine qualities. And I think that just in general, being in a body is a little fucking weird. Sometimes we look at ourselves and we're like, oh God, I wish this was different. This feels strange. But to answer your question, for me, I mean, sometimes I just don't even know either way. I'm just a person. I'm both. I'm just having an adventure with my gender, and let's see where it goes. And
a gender adventure.
A gender adventure. And there's parts of the feminine parts of me that I really, really love, and parts of the masculine parts of me that I really, really love. And I think I've always kind of leaned in the direction of being more masculine, but I think I'm okay with both genders. But I also realize like I have one life, and if I've been curious about being a man and I've leaned in that direction for quite some time in my mind, and I've thought like this could be cool, might as well just do it.
Yeah, why not? Rosie, have you ever considered that for yourself, transitioning?
No, I enjoy being a woman. I enjoy having a vagina and boobs and presenting very feminine. And I've always played with gender also ever since I was a little kid. I have two brothers, I have a sister too, but I'm between two brothers. And so growing up, I always wanted to make sure I was as tough as any boy could be. So I, would wear coveralls and change the oil of my car and do all kinds of like manly things, drive Mack trucks and front end loaders and crush gravel, and I've had all kinds of crazy jobs. I can weld. I'm actually more handy and more manly than Kit is when it comes down to it. But I enjoy like exploring masculine roles, but I've also always really enjoyed like looking like a woman and presenting as a woman. And I've also, ever since I was old enough to have a crush on anyone, and I was kind of a late bloomer, I didn't really have a crush on someone for the first time till I was about 14. My first crush was on a girl, but I knew ever since the beginning that I was attracted to whatever, like men, women, or anything in between. And in fact, the more androgynous, the better. I even had a club with my best friends in high school. We called it the Androgynous Crew. This was on the East Coast where everybody had crews. It was like a hardcore scene thing.
Like the Beastie Boys, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so so my brothers had their own crew. We had the Androgynous Crew, and we all cut our hair short and wore coveralls. And the point was you can't tell if we were men or women, but it was pretty obvious we were all girls, high school girls. But yeah, so that's me. So I've always played with it. I've always explored it, but I've also always been really comfortable like in the feminine expression.
Yeah. I would say that I'm more comfortable in the masculine expression, but I don't hate my feminine side. And if you look at it from like when I was younger, to go back to your original question, there are definitely signs that something like this is probably coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people ask me, they say, it must have been really strange for you. Basically, I haven't been with a man in about 10 years. I was engaged to a man when I realized that I really wanted to be with women for a while. So I didn't end up getting married to a man. And so that was about 10 years ago. And so I've basically been a lesbian for the last 10 years. And so when kids started transitioning, the biggest question they would ask me was like, doesn't it feel weird to lose your identity as a lesbian? And the answer is yes, but also I never identified only as lesbian to begin with. So it actually makes more sense for me that I would marry a woman who became a man. That actually like fits with the rest of the narrative of my life much better.
And now you guys are, I guess, technically just a heterosexual couple.
Just a regular straight couple.
What do you think is important for straight people like myself to know about transgender process, or I don't know, what do you think is, do we commonly make any mistakes, or are there any?
That's opening up a can of worms right there. But
it depends on who you're talking to. Yeah. Like you're going to make 100 mistakes with one person that another person will completely accept and be gracious with. The thing about transgender people in general, is you have to meet everybody where they're at for who they are. And it's not doesn't have anything to do with trans or male, female, Christian, Muslim. It's that everybody has different sensitivities and different ways that they need to be treated. And you have to approach every single human being with curiosity and with an open mind.
Yeah. So just to bounce off of that, for instance, one of the biggest offensive things that a lot of trans people would prefer people not in that realm to consider is asking about surgeries and genitals.
And previous names.
Those are subjects that tend to offend people, because if you think about it from your end of things, you know, if somebody came up and asked you, what does your penis look like, or how's it doing, or, you know, what's going on with your balls, it might be like, excuse me, what?
We're going to save all that for the third episode.
No.
Paperless episode.
Yeah. So as far as we go, and as far as Kit goes, Kit's like very on the very, very open-ended side of things, where, you know, we let people ask whatever questions they are curious about, as long as they're respectful in asking them.
And it's like with every single person that you're in a relationship with, you can kind of feel into your comfort level of the relationship and how close you are being open about things that are normally kind of private. Mm. You can tell when somebody's a very private person, or when somebody's a very open book. And you really got to feel into the situation of like, is this person comfortable with me asking this in this moment, and is it appropriate? Mm-hmm. And that's something you got to feel into with every single person that you meet in general. Like, you wouldn't just walk up to somebody on the street that you just met and say, "Oh, well, how's your penis doing?" Or mm-hmm. or like, "What happened with your vagina last month?" It's common sense. Yeah. But if you were with your best bud, or you know someone really well, or you clicked with them really well, conversation was getting really deep, you could tell they were opening up, you could ask permission to ask a question. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's common sense.
Yeah. So I think also the biggest thing is just don't make assumptions. Always be curious and be respectful, because there are a lot of people out there also who may identify as trans, but also may identify as non-binary, which to many people doesn't make a lot of sense, because you're thinking, wait a minute, if you're trans, that means you were one gender, now you're another gender. So if you're non-binary, that means that you don't have to identify as any gender. So it can get confusing, and it can get kind of mysterious to puzzle it all out. So the best thing is just to ask permission, ask questions, be curious, be respectful. And most people will appreciate that you asked instead of just assuming.
One thing that comes up for me as a biologist, you know, in most mammal species where there's male and female, it's like very clear that it's reproductive targeted separation. And then, you know, some percentage of humans are non-reproductive or gay, or, you know, non-binary or whatever. And I'm just curious.
Intersex.
What's that?
Or intersex, where they have both.
Or they have both.
They're born, yeah.
Do you have any sense for, is there some sort of biological advantage to have a percentage of our population not, you know, filling these normal male-female gender roles?
Yeah, there's always biological advantage. I don't know, but like advantage to society, absolutely. Like, do we want to live in the Stone Ages where ideas and thoughts and everything has not evolved? Fuck no. Like that sounds boring.
Yeah. Also, I mean, biologically, I have to say that I feel very privileged to be able to choose when I have a child, because we can't have a child biologically. We have to plan that out and be prepared for it. Whereas I would say out of all of the hetero friends that I have, out of all of them that have children, or even like just hetero people I know, like my parents, for instance, and most of our parents, most of them get pregnant by accident. I have to say, at least 75% they get pregnant by accident, and they go, whoops, well, looks like I'm not going to college or going to Europe or starting my business or doing any of these things, because now I'm a parent and I'm going to just figure it out. But if you could imagine what the world would be like if everyone was prepared to be a parent before they became a parent, whoa. How much trouble could we save because of that? How many like children's well-beings could be altered? So I don't know. That's something to think about. Yeah. You know,
I think from a social standpoint, like why this is hopefully this metaphor will land. Sometimes they don't. Why, Derek, do you travel and go on adventures?
That's a really deep question. But yeah, it's sort of like just a drive. It's sort of like almost a requirement.
Yeah. And like, I know that a lot of people, they travel and go on adventures to experience something new, to experience coming up against their comfort zones and seeing new cultures, seeing new people, seeing new things. Because in experiencing things that are outside of yourself that you're not normally used to, there's this like major growth that happens within. And I think society, the world is desiring this major growth, this major shift. And I think that every time there's a desire, collective conscious desire for growth and shift, there's something new that comes out of that. And I'm not saying that like transgender people, this isn't an old thing that hasn't been happening for a really long time, but it's coming up in society right now. That it's like let's say it's trending.
Is that also because technology is improving and the options are more available?
Yeah, probably.
I think, that not only are the options more available, but people who previously would be living in rural areas would be isolated and would be ostracized if they even considered something like this. But now that it's in the media, everybody has Facebook, everybody has access to talk to other people. You have an instant community and you have an instant support network. So I think that it's for gay people too, not just trans people, but for everybody who wants to live an alternative lifestyle. Many of these people were previously had to be closeted for their own safety. They had to keep it a secret, or they weren't even aware that it was a thing. Like a lot of people say that I didn't even know that this could be a thing until I saw this on Facebook or whatever. So it's like it's a beautiful thing. It's giving people options to live in their authentic selves. It's really cool.
I'm curious about simply the idea of adventure, as you just asked me about. A lot of history's greatest explorers were men. A small portion have been women, like Amelia Earhart. But by and large, adventurers and explorers have been men, and especially like European men. And, a lot of little boys dream of growing up to be cowboys or space rangers or, whatever it is. And so there's this, in my mind, this sort of wildernessy, wild nature of boys and men. And I'm just curious if, Rosie, I know you had some of that growing up in yourself, even though you're a woman. But my question is, where does adventure fit in with masculinity for you guys?
It's funny, Derek, that you bring this up. Have you ever watched the show Naked and Afraid?
No.
Okay, so it's this show
to watch.
You watch it online, where two people, a man and a woman, cisgendered. So cisgender means that they were just born that way. No changes have been made. Yeah. And a man and a woman who don't know each other get dropped off completely naked in the middle of the wild. So they'll be dropped off in the Amazon rainforest. They'll be dropped off in the Sahara, like really very dangerous places to survive. And they have to survive for 21 days. I don't even know what they get at the end of the 21 days. I don't know if there's a cash prize or what, but the show has like 9 seasons or something. And if you look at the ratios, the women almost always win over the men in surviving in the wilderness.
They kick the men's ass. Not only do they win, but they end up completely taking care of these men who are crippled by their masculinity.
Yeah. And so in my experience as growing up as a woman and also as a lesbian, always calling myself like a handy dyke or like using words like that to describe myself because I'm always the one that is like installing my friends' shelves for them or, fixing building stuff, I'm really, really resourceful. And when I think about what women are biologically prepared to do in life, which is, care for many children, give birth, which is a really, really difficult process, really painful, really extreme, kind of like women are built for endurance. Men are built for like sprints. basically, is what it comes down to. So women are built to be resourceful and have more long-term survival mechanisms, and men are built to be like the hunters, like boom, boom, pow, I got this meat, now I'm going to sleep for 3 days.
Now you're going to cook it for me, I'm going to kick back and you feed me.
Yeah, so...
I mean, this is not everybody. This is not all men and women. And obviously, like, gender is completely a spectrum, and there's a lot of men who are built for endurance and a lot of women who just, like, crank it the fuck out real fast. But
yeah, of course, there's always variations, but in general, it's just funny that you asked about the relationship between adventuring and masculinity, because I don't know, I'm not sure, because are my tendencies to do those things, are they masculine tendencies, or are they actually feminine tendencies that have been labeled as masculine? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting reframe. Yeah. So I guess the root of that question comes from me seeing men and peers that are sort of like caged in their suburban lifestyle or their cubicle or whatever. And the answer often may be just go on an adventure and spend time in the wilderness or go travel and experience new cultures. Maybe that applies equally to both genders, but I only see it in guy friends, or maybe I'm more connected to that.
Yeah, I think it just depends on your life experience, because like I said, we've been friends with like mostly lesbians and gay men over the last 10 years. And in general, this is a huge generalization, again, huge stereotype, but in general, the gay men are the ones that are like, no, I don't want to go camp. I want to go to an all-inclusive resort where everything's given to me and I can kick back and put on my nice clothes and have a drink. And all of the women who are lesbians are like, yeah, let's go camping. I got a pickup truck, So for us, it's really been very reverse. And that's our reality, that's how we've lived our lives. So I just find that really funny, because we hardly know any people who are in the opposite situation.
Yeah. So I was recently at Oktoberfest, and we got there super early one morning, and we were the very first people into Oktoberfest out of the 100,000 people that day or whatever. It was super cool. And we were standing in line next to this group, and we told them what tent we were going, the Hofbräu House, and they said, no, you got to go to this other tent because it's Gay Sunday and 6,000 gay people take over this tent, and it's the most fun you're going to have. So we went to that tent, and it was probably, it was probably 90% men, 90% gay men, not that many lesbians. But I found that it was endlessly entertaining, and everyone seemed so comfortable with themselves, which I kind of was like, ooh, I want some of that, because they're just like all over the spectrum in terms of like how outgoing or flamboyant or loud and provocative they are. My question is about, because you guys have, let's say non-straight people in general have to figure out who you are, it seems like you're much more comfortable like expressing yourself in all different manners. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I would say for the people who are out in public, because they've had to develop so much perseverance to really show themselves, once they're out, it's like kaboom, like can't hold this back anymore.
Also notoriously gay or queer spaces, like the gay tent, right? That's why we have gay clubs, because that is our safe space to really be who we are, because many of those people probably aren't that way when they're not in that space.
Okay.
Or at least, not all of them are. You can guarantee that. And the reason why we have spaces like that is so that people can really just let loose and be completely expressive without the fear of being judged or physically attacked. And thank goodness, thank the universe, whatever, that it's 2017 and that's happening less and less. But also the current political climate is not super friendly to that right now either. So it's always something that we have to be aware of when we are in public and in public spaces. So when we have our own spaces like that, it's this womb for creativity and for pure expression. And it's really beautiful.
Wow, it really comes back to the feeling of being caged. You said masculine people, they're in the home, in the suburbs, going to their 9 to 5 over and over and over again. And they kind of just need to kaboom, escape and go travel and go on an adventure. I think it's very similar with gay people who have had to hide for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, it's reminding me of going to improv for myself, like a chance to like let a little bit of crazy out. But I feel like there's not exactly an equivalent for straight people, like a straight tent, but you can be crazy today kind of thing. I don't know. Is there anything?
Halloween.
Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Halloween. It is. Halloween is like the straight people's pride party because they can be whoever they want to be. They can be as sexy as they want to be. They can be as provocative as they want to be, and no one's going to judge them because it's Halloween. So you can turn any costume into like a sexy costume, right? And just let it all hang out and get as drunk as possible.
Ecstatic dance. That's another place where you see people just
yeah.
But generally that's a pretty queer space too.
Sure it is.
Yeah. But yeah. So I would say Burning Man and Halloween.
Interesting.
Two places, where straight people can kind of let down all their guards and where all people can really. But
yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the most important self-work that you guys had to do to sort of be more comfortable publicly being who you are in any sense?
I don't think that you can narrow it down to one, but I think if you had to say something was most important, it's just to continue the work. Mm-hmm. Like, always continue to do work on yourself, to stop what's coming up that's blocking you from being yourself the most, to be aware of the thoughts that are getting in the way of your true authenticity. I think the most important work is just consistently doing the work. But if you had to narrow it down to one piece that was the most for you, what would you say, hon?
Well, I'm going to say just to start that I'm extremely fortunate. I grew up in a family where individuality was really encouraged. And so I almost never had to put myself in a box or pretend to be something different. Everyone in my family was really crazy, really weird, and it was very celebrated. So the only time I started getting boxed in was like a lot of kids in middle school, right? When you start feeling judged by other people. This concept is something we talk about a lot in body work and in yoga. And it's called core tension. So core tension is this idea of, our teacher gives this really, really beautiful example. He has a son, and when his son was little, he has a little girl and a little boy. The boy's younger. When his son was really little, he would put on his sister's Disney princess dresses and twirl around in them because they were just colorful and sparkly and fun and flowy, and they made cool noises when he twirled around. And my teacher always encouraged that. Just, have fun, whatever, be creative, be playful. And one day his son was about 4, and they went to the post office together, and he wore one of these Disney dresses to the post office. And when they were in the post office in line, this kind of masculine dude looked at him and he said, "Don't you know boys aren't supposed to wear dresses?" And my teacher said he looked at his son and he saw him just shut down. His head just dropped, his shoulders slumped. And after that, he never wore one of those dresses again. And he always kept that kind of sparkly, twirly, colorful part of himself inside. And so he said that was the moment he could see. That was the first time that core tension started developing. And so for some people from certain cultures, that core tension becomes wrapped around our insides so tightly that it holds back a lot of other things. And when you first start releasing it, it can look like you're having a seizure. It's also in Kundalini yoga. It's called a Kundalini awakening. It's also called a dural release. And it's this crazy process where everything kind of starts to become aligned again. And so I think that to me has been one of the most important concepts to learn about, is that core tension, and to start to recognize when you become aware of it, you can recognize when it's kind of creeping up on you, when you start to feel that you're being contained or oppressed, and you can get someone to release it, or you could release it yourself through movement, through body work and dance and things like that.
Is there a way to teach kids from a very young age to be more resilient against, taking on those types of things and letting them affect them so much? Do you think?
I think just having that awareness, teaching them that awareness from a young age, and just teaching them that, be yourself. Not everybody's always going to like it when you're yourself, and people might try to box you up, but just be aware of that when that's happening, and be aware of when somebody dims your spirit, And I think if kids are prepared for that, if they know that some people are going to try and dim their spirit, they can kind of watch out for that. And they could know that that person is not right. It's what they feel inside that's right. You know, I think that's the most important thing as parents to do. Help them trust their internal guidance.
Sorry. Yeah, I think also it's important to point out that our challenges and our struggles that we come up against sometimes make us stronger and more resilient to be ourselves later on. And if it weren't for coming up against new challenges, coming up against new situations, having somebody be a little bit of a hater on us, sometimes if you don't have those challenges, you don't have the strength and the resilience to be who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yes, you can't shelter people from the world. You can only just think that whatever this person is going to go through, this child, that no matter how hard the challenge, how hard the struggle, on the other side, there's always going to be something beautiful. And it's always going to be better.
That being said, I think there are certain types of education that foster creativity and help a child develop in the way that feels true to themselves a little bit more than others. So like Montessori schools or Waldorf schools, I think both styles of education I prefer over traditional education. So, I mean, we're not parents yet, but when we are, that's what we're going to do. So, but yeah, that's.
You've obviously thought about this probably more than I have.
Yes.
That's funny.
Ooh, there. Well, if you want to get into one of those schools, you got to apply now. When baby is, what's your baby's name?
Axel. Yeah.
He's what, 10 months old?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you should have applied 10 months ago.
Well, I'll just start a school and then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Give him admission.
Yeah.
But you know what? It definitely comes down to what we started with is every single child is different. You got to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
You got to listen, be curious, and really try your best to understand their experience of the world and how you can support them in being their best.
Yeah. Can we talk for a second about how so at the gay tent, for example, I really enjoyed my time that day. It was, obviously we're all drinking, having fun anyway. But I also felt that I was a little bit standoffish, and I think in general around gay people, or I don't really know that many transgender people, I'm just slightly uncomfortable, and I was thinking about that before this interview, and I think my main discomfort is whether like it might rub off on me and I might have to change my identity permanently or something like that. Like I've been totally comfortable being straight my whole life. If so many exciting gay people are there, I'm like, what if I turn gay, or what if I
lean in, Derek?
What if I want to be gay?
I mean,
what would be wrong with that?
Right. I think it can be a very scary thing for people to consider renegotiating their identity.
Yeah.
Especially if you've previously felt very comfortable with your identity and very strong in it. When you start to question it, even just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of, oh, what if this rubs off on me a little bit? What if I all of a sudden like to wear hot pants or whatever? Then that's a good thing to explore. Definitely exploring it. You can explore it in lots of different ways that are safe and supportive. For instance, like there's a lot of good podcasts out there that can help you explore what that might look like. There's even we've known plenty of people who were straight, and I don't know if you guys are married, but married with kids, in a heterosexual relationship, who have renegotiated that later on and evolved their relationship to where they're not necessarily like they wouldn't necessarily have to end their relationship that they're currently in. It just becomes a new variation of it. And I think that for any marriage, gay, straight, pansexual, open, closed, monogamous, polyamorous, whatever you want to call it, any marriage is going to go through a process of evolution. You have to grow and change with your partner. Otherwise, you'll be stagnant, and that never ends well. Never ends well. If you think you're going to be married to the same person after a year or 5 years or 45 years, you're going to be completely different people.
That's how you end up feeling. That's how you end up feeling caged. You make a strong definition of who you are and how it's going to be. You think it's never going to change. And then all of a sudden, everything's changing around you. Your body's changing. Your face is changing.
Oh my
your
God.
are changing.
We're aging.
We're aging. And you still are married to this idea that, no, I'm this way. I mean,
Right.
How long have you guys been married?
5 years.
5 years. And
we were friends for 5 years before that.
Okay, yeah, so you've known each other a decade. So how has your relationship evolved given Kit's transition?
Both are. A lot of people ask about that.
How has it evolved? I think I'm a little less emotional, which is less taxing on the relationship. Thanks, hon. Thanks. Don't get a period, which is pretty damn cool. So our sanitary feminine napkin budget.
Okay.
So
yep.
I mean, well, like number one, we went from being a lesbian couple to being a trans couple because there's a period where there's a thing called passing, right? When you transition, where you go from looking like a man to looking like a woman, or vice versa. And so the period in between is where you go around and people look at you and they kind of, their eyebrows kind of go together and they think, is that, what's going on there? So it usually lasts between a year and 2 years for most people. And so we're just on the other end of that period where now Kit has a full beard. And so when we go out, people just automatically assume that he's a cis man and we just get pegged as a straight couple.
It's so interesting.
It's really interesting because before, as lesbians, we still got some looks. You know, we generally live places where it's not that weird, but you still get looks, you know. And actually, I enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed going into queer spaces and feeling like, you know, this is our people. Now that Kit passes fully, if we go into a queer space, it's almost like we have to make an announcement. Like, don't worry, we're queer too. No, we're not just tourists.
Most queer people, I think, still know I'm trans.
Yeah, generally, yeah.
Not all of them, but most of them do.
Yeah, and, you know, as a couple, between us, our relationships evolved. I think what's been really cool is that we because of the transition, we've had the opportunity to evolve in so many other directions as well. Like, we are constantly evolving as people. Also, as coaches, as yoga teachers, we're constantly doing personal development. We're constantly having revelations about ourselves and growth moments and, you know, exploring codependency and all of that too. So really, like, if we're not changing every month or so and doing big amounts of work on ourselves, then it gets stale really quickly. So we're constantly in a state of growth and change. Although right now, after lots and lots and lots of growth and change, we're feeling like, you know what, we need a little period of rest.
Yep.
Just to be,
yeah.
just to explore work and be in one place for a little while.
Be with the changes. Be with who we are right now. Mm-hmm. Experience it. Let it just be nice.
Mm-hmm. And it's really nice to just accept each other fully, no matter where we're at in life. And sometimes that means that the different layers of our relationship, some of them can be stronger than others. Like, for instance, sometimes our sexual connection is stronger than at other times. Our romantic connection is stronger than at other times. Our business connection, our connection as roommates, as best friends, you know, like, we have all these different relationships, and they're constantly shifting position as to, like, what's the prominent one.
In terms of gender, it like, when you put all of that other stuff into the mix, the gender thing is kind of just a sliver.
It really is.
And
yeah.
What do we have this talk often about? Like, sometimes I get these little fears, like, oh, what if she doesn't love me anymore because I'm a man and she married me as a woman? But then the truth comes out, which is the obvious truth for a lot of people, is that if I'm not feeling good about myself, if I'm not feeling sexy, if I'm not being a confident human being, if I'm not being responsible and on fire for my life and in love with my life and in love with her, then I'm just not fucking attractive, period. And that's the real thing that I have to manage. It's not about gender or how that affects our relationship. It's how my own mental self and relationship to me and her affects our relationship.
That's completely right. Yeah.
And it's the same for you. Like, if PMSing and crying in the closet. I'm like, oh, geez, hon, that's not cute. I don't care what you look like or what you're wearing or how your hair is. It's bad.
I like that. That's a great reminder. Kid, I'm curious. You've got a beard now, and is that exciting, or what's physically, what's it been like changing your appearance and all of these things? Has it been fun?
The changes happened so slowly that it was like for a year and a half, I was trying to pass, excited to look like a dude. And then at some point I finally just fucking gave up because I was not passing. And when I finally gave up because I wasn't passing, all of a sudden I had a beard and it was all there. And the excitement was kind of like, wah, wah. But it's also like, if you ask a 14-year-old boy, what's it like having a beard now? It's kind of similar. Like, your life just changes so slowly. And then all of a sudden you blink and it's different. You don't really even remember what it was like before. And the only reference I have for what it was like before is when I look at a photo of myself and I'm like, whoa, that's really different now. But when I look at myself day to day in the mirror, it doesn't even feel that different.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, it's weird, exciting, and cool all at the same time. But it is fun, like having a beard. It's also a pain in the ass sometimes having a beard, like traveling and not deciding which grooming tools you're gonna bring with you. Your beard gets crazy, and you look in here and you're like, fuck, I look like insane.
Mountain man.
Yeah.
We had a dirty secret. It's actually, we have no secrets.
We have
open about everything, but
dirty
I trimmed Kit's beard just a tiny bit on an airplane with eyebrow scissors. He just had some like crazy wild hairs, and I was like, let me just like 3 or 4 hairs.
Yeah.
No one was looking at the moment, so it worked out. But yeah.
Yeah, it's always the gray hairs in my dark beard that grow extra long and are, super obvious. Your eyebrows and your gray beard hairs are going to give you away for getting older, even if you don't want people to know you're getting older.
I kind of like my gray beard hairs.
I trimmed his eyebrows too.
Yeah, you did. They were like
crazy. Some of his hairs get like 2 inches long. They just start to like, woo, they go wild.
Someone told me, don't trim your eyebrows because that's ancient wisdom coming through. And I was like, all right, saves me that effort.
That's cool.
Let's see. This is a good time for a transition into the next part. Into the part 2 of our episode. So for the listener, take a quick break and go back to your cassette disc player. No, I'm just turn over the tape to side 2. All right, hope you enjoyed that episode with Kit and Rosie. If you have any more questions for them, you can reach out to them on Twitter or Instagram. And if you want to learn how they run their business, their volcano retreats and coaching, then listen to the next episode. And if you yourself are looking for an adventure trip, make sure you go to derekloudermilk.com and check out Adventure Quest for 2018. We've got some cool offerings, including one in Bali that's specifically for established entrepreneurs. We're going to be doing canyoning, also climbing a volcano, surfing, and some high intensity business coaching to take your business to the next level. And so this is a select group of peers that are all well-established, successful entrepreneurs. So the group itself is part of the value. So if that sounds like something you're interested, head over to Adventure Quest, to derekloudermilk.com/AdventureQuest Bali, and check that out. That is all for today's episode. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.